I-27F, need to share what's happening in my life because I can barely believe it myself. I've always been the second best child in my family, living in the shadow of my sister Susan, 32F. From the moment I can remember, everything in our house revolved around her. She got the best of everything while I got the leftovers. I work as a medical office administrator now, and I've managed to build a decent life for myself despite my parents' clear favoritism. But let me start from the beginning so you can understand how we got here. My parents aren't poor, they both have good jobs, and we lived in a nice suburban house. The problem was never about money, it was about how they chose to spend it. Susan went to an expensive private school while I was sent to the local public one. She got dance lessons, horseback riding, tennis coaching, you name it. Meanwhile, I had to work part-time jobs through high school just to buy basic art supplies for my passion. I discovered my love for art when I was around 12. I'd spend hours in my room, trying to capture the world around me on paper. When I showed my first real drawing to my dad, hoping for some encouragement, he just shrugged and said, "That's nice, Abigail, but don't waste too much time on it. You need to focus on getting a real job someday. You're not academically gifted like your sister." Those words stung, but they didn't stop me. I started looking up tutorials online, using my allowance and part-time job money to buy cheap art supplies. I'd hide in my room, painting and sketching, dreaming of the day I could show the world my art. Meanwhile, Susan was the perpetual star of the family. Mom and Dad threw money at her like it was going out of style. The funny thing? She never stuck with anything. "I'm just not feeling the dance vibe anymore," she'd announce after 6 months of expensive lessons. "I think I want to try photography now." Without missing a beat, Mom would say, "Of course, sweetie. We'll get you the best camera and a new laptop for editing." I couldn't believe my ears. Here I was, begging for a few dollars for paintbrushes, while Susan got entire rooms converted for her latest whims. Our living room turned into a shrine to her so-called achievements. A massive display case dominated the wall, crammed with her certificates, ribbons, and trophies. Most of them were participation awards, but you'd think she'd won Olympic gold from the way our parents fawned over them. The only person who ever really saw me was my grandmother, Helen, 75F. She lived nearby in a cozy little house, and visiting her became my escape. One day, she caught me sketching in her garden. Well, she said, peering over my shoulder, "Looks like we've got a real artist here." For the first time in my life, someone looked at my art and saw potential. Grandma Helen's eyes sparkled as she hatched a plan. "How about we set up a little studio for you here? I've got that spare room upstairs that's just collecting dust." Before I knew it, she had transformed that dusty old room into an artist's paradise. She bought me an easel, real artist quality paints, and even signed me up for private lessons with a local artist. After high school, I knew I had to be practical. I couldn't count on my parents for college, they'd made that clear when they spent my college fund on Susan's third attempt at university. So I got certified as a medical office administrator. It was a stable job that paid the bills, and more importantly, it gave me the means to continue pursuing my art on the side. The years rolled by, and the gap between Susan and me only widened. While I built my life carefully, balancing my day job with my passion for art, Susan bounced from one expensive endeavor to another, always with our parents' full financial backing. She tried teaching, then marketing, then as social media influencing, each new career path funded by our parents' seemingly endless generosity. Then, like a hurricane, Susan burst back into our lives last month. She'd been relatively quiet for a while, living in another state and doing whatever she was doing. But she showed up on our doorstep with a guy in tow. "Mom, Dad," she squealed, "meet Jake, 34M, my husband." Instead of asking the obvious questions, like why they weren't invited to the wedding, my parents just embraced them both. "Oh, sweetie, we're so happy for you." Mom gushed. "Welcome to the family, son," Dad slapped Jake on the back. I stood in the background, invisible as always. Congrats, I guess," I muttered. Susan barely acknowledged me. "By the way," she added, "Jake's going to be living with us for a while. That's cool, right?" Before I could process what was happening, Jake was moving his stuff into our guest room. Just like that, our household dynamic shifted again. 2 months flew by in a blur of awkward family dinners and tense silences. Susan and Jake had taken over the house like a pair of entitled royals. Then, one evening, Dad called me into the living room. "Abigail, we need to talk." My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever came from those words in this house. Mom and Dad sat on the couch, with Susan and Jake lounging nearby. I perched on the edge of an armchair, feeling like I was facing a firing squad. Dad cleared his throat. "Abigail, you know we've been saving some money for your future." I nodded, a glimmer of hope rising in my chest. Maybe they were finally going to do right by me. "Well," he continued, "we've decided to give that money to Susan instead." The world stopped. I must have misheard. Mom jumped in, her voice sickly sweet. "Sweetie, Susan needs it more. She's married now, starting a family. We have to think about their future." I looked at Susan, who couldn't even meet my eyes. Jake just smirked. The injustice of it all hit me like a tidal wave. "Are you kidding me? You've given Susan everything her whole life, and now you're taking away the one thing you promised me?" "Watch your tone, young lady," Mom snapped. "You should be grateful we're not charging you rent for living here and eating our food all these years." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Grateful? For doing the bare minimum as parents? Dad stood up, his face red. "That's enough. You're an adult now, Abigail. It's time you started acting like one." He disappeared into the hallway and returned with a new suitcase. He dropped it at my feet with a thud that echoed through my soul. "Consider this your graduation gift," he said coldly. "Pack your things and get out. Tonight." I looked at each of them in turn, Dad's stern face, Mom's averted eyes, Susan's guilty expression, Jake's smug grin. Not one of them spoke up for me, and in that moment, something inside me broke. And in its place, a steely resolve took root. Without a word, I grabbed the suitcase and marched to my room. As I threw my belongings into it, I could hear Susan's excited chatter through the wall. "Oh my God, Jake, we can turn Abigail's room into my walk-in closet. I've always wanted one of those." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. In less than an hour, I had packed up 27 years of my life. I took one last look around the room that had been my sanctuary and my prison, then without saying goodbye, I walked out the front door. I stumbled up to Grandma Helen's porch, dragging my suitcase behind me. Before I could even knock, the door flew open, and there she was, arms outstretched. "Oh, Abigail," she said, pulling me into a fierce hug. I broke down then, ugly sobs racking my body as Grandma held me. She guided me inside, sat me on her worn but comfortable couch, and listened as I poured out the whole sordid tale. When I finished, Grandma's eyes were blazing. "Those fools," she muttered. Then she took my hands in hers. "Abigail, listen to me. You're staying here, and we're going to figure this out together." As I write this from my new room at Grandma Helen's house, I'm still processing everything that's happened. But for the first time in my life, I feel like maybe, just maybe, this is the beginning of something better. Grandma Helen has already started talking about helping me pursue my art seriously, and I can see a future I never dared to dream of before. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know one thing for certain: I'm done being the family doormat. My parents and Susan have no idea what they've just set in motion. Sometimes the best revenge is success, and I intend to succeed beyond their wildest expectations. I'll update when there are developments. Something tells me this story is far from over. Update 1: It's been 6 months since I was kicked out of my parents' house. First, thank you all for your supportive comments on my last post. Buckle up, because a lot has happened, and you won't believe where this story is heading. With Grandma Helen's support, I enrolled in the prestigious Carson Art Institute's evening program. The tuition wasn't cheap, but Grandma insisted. "This is an investment in your future," she said, writing the check without hesitation. During the day, I kept my medical admin job. Those organizational skills actually became crucial for managing my budding art career. The transition wasn't easy. My days became a carefully choreographed dance: wake up at 5 a.m., paint for 2 hours, work at the medical office from 8 to 4, art classes from 5 to 9, then more painting until midnight. Exhausting? Yes. Worth it? Absolutely. My art style evolved rapidly under proper tuition. I specialized in creating what my professors called metaphysical creatures, beings that seemed to exist between reality and imagination. Each creature carried elements of human emotion, natural forms, and pure fantasy. Professor Richardson, my main instructor, was particularly intrigued by my work. "Abigail," he said one evening, studying my latest piece, "there's something uniquely compelling about your creatures. They're not just fantastical beings, they're emotional landscapes given form. Have you considered developing this into a larger series?" That conversation led to what I now call my ethereal beings collection. I created 12 large-scale paintings, each featuring a creature that embodied different aspects of human experience. There was the Hope Weaver, a luminescent being with gossamer wings made of shattered dreams reformed. The Grief Guardian, a gentle giant that collected tears in crystal vases and transformed them into starlight. The real turning point came during the school's annual exhibition last month. I submitted 3 pieces from my collection, not expecting much attention. But on opening night, I noticed a group of people repeatedly returning to my corner. They whispered intensely while pointing at various details in my work. One of them, a sharp-dressed woman named Victoria Bennett, finally approached me. "I'm the creative director at Dreamscape Studios," she said, handing me her business card. "We've been developing a new animated series, and your creatures, they're exactly what we've been searching for." My hands trembled as I took her card. Dreamscape Studios isn't just any animation company, they're the creators of some of the most successful animated franchises of the past decade. Victoria explained that they were looking to create a new show that would appeal to both children and adults, something that could tackle complex emotional themes through fantasy elements. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of meetings and negotiations. Grandma Helen insisted on hiring a top-tier entertainment lawyer, Mr. Davidson. "If they want your art," she said firmly, "they'll pay you what it's worth." Mr. Davidson was worth every penny. He found details in the contract I never would have noticed. The initial offer was good, but Mr. Davidson pushed for better terms. "Your creatures aren't just characters," he explained during a strategy session, "they're an entire world, a merchandise goldmine. We need to secure your creative rights and proper compensation." After intense negotiations, we reached an agreement that exceeded my wildest dreams. Not only would I receive substantial upfront payment and ongoing royalties, but I would also retain creative control over my creature's development. Dreamscape even agreed to fund a companion art book featuring my original paintings. Of course, news of my success somehow reached my family. The first message came from Susan. "Hey, sis. OMG, heard about your amazing art thing. That's so incredible. By the way, Jake and I are having some money troubles with the new house. Since you're doing so well now, maybe you could help your big sister out? Family first, right?" I didn't respond, but the messages kept coming. Mom wrote, "Sweetie, we're so proud of you. We always knew you had talent. Your father and I were just trying to push you to be practical. Can we meet for coffee? There's so much to discuss." Dad's message was more direct. "Your mother and I have been thinking about your future. We should talk about investment strategies for your new income. I know some excellent financial advisors." The audacity is breathtaking. They throw me out, take my savings, and now want to manage my success? Meanwhile, my art career has taken off in unexpected ways. Beyond the Dreamscape deal, several galleries have expressed interest in hosting my work. Professor Richardson connected me with the prestigious Hammond Gallery, and they're planning my first solo exhibition for next spring. I've moved my studio from Grandma's spare room to her converted garage, a much larger space with perfect natural light. Every morning, I wake up excited to create. The creatures that once lived only in my imagination are finding their way into the world, and people are connecting with them in ways I never expected. Victoria from Dreamscape called again yesterday. They're not just thinking about one show, they see potential for an entire franchise. Books, merchandise, theme park attractions, the possibilities seem endless. It's overwhelming, but Grandma Helen helps me stay grounded. Success is the best revenge, she says with a knowing smile, but make sure it's success on your own terms. She's right, of course. I'm done living in anyone's shadow. My creatures are teaching me something important. Sometimes the most beautiful things come from embracing what makes you different. I suspect my family's attempts to reconnect are just beginning. Part of me wants to confront them, to throw their past treatment back in their faces. But I'm choosing a different path. As Grandma Helen says, let your success speak for itself. Build your empire, and let them watch from the outside. I'll update again when there's more news about the Dreamscape production or my upcoming exhibition. For now, I'm focusing on my art and cherishing the one family member who always believed in me. The best part? I have a feeling this is just the beginning of something amazing. Update 2, my heart is heavy as I write this update. The past year has brought both incredible success and devastating loss. I, 27F, need to share what's happened, as this community has been so supportive throughout my journey. First, the professional news, my animated series Ethereal Beings, premiered on Dreamscape's streaming platform 3 months ago. The response has been overwhelming. Critics are calling it a breakthrough in emotional storytelling and a masterclass in blending fantasy with real-world feelings. The show hit #1 in family viewing across multiple countries, and merchandise sales have exceeded all projections. The success changed my life in ways I never imagined. My original artwork now sells for 5-figure sums. I've been featured in major art magazines, and galleries are competing to host my exhibitions. The Ethereal Beings art book became an instant bestseller, with fans particularly connecting to the stories behind each creature's creation. But success came with its own challenges. My inbox filled with interview requests, speaking invitations, and collaboration offers. Mr. Davidson, my entertainment lawyer, hired a team to manage my growing brand. Your creatures are becoming a global phenomenon, he explained during one of our meetings. We need to protect and nurture their growth. Dreamscape is already planning 3 more seasons, a feature film, and an interactive theme park experience. They've given me a dedicated animation team and complete creative control. Watching my creatures come to life through animation has been surreal. Seeing children dress up as the Hope Weaver and Grief Guardian for conventions brings me to tears. But amid all this success, life dealt me the cruelest blow. Grandma Helen fell ill 2 months ago. What started as seemingly minor fatigue quickly turned serious. The doctors discovered advanced pancreatic cancer, already spread too far for treatment. I moved my work completely to her house, setting up a small animation studio in the living room so I could be with her. We spent our days together, her in her favorite armchair while I worked on creature designs. She loved watching the rough animations, offering suggestions even as her strength waned. Your creatures help people understand their feelings, she told me one evening, holding my hand. That's a rare and precious gift, Abigail. Promise me you'll keep sharing it with the world. She passed away peacefully last week, holding my hand as she drifted off. I lost not just my grandmother, but my biggest supporter, my truest friend, and the only real parent I've ever known. The funeral was beautiful, filled with people whose lives Grandma Helen had touched. I arranged for her favorite flowers and hired a string quartet to play her beloved classical pieces. As I stood there delivering the eulogy, I noticed my parents and Susan in the back row. They hadn't visited her once during her illness, despite my letting them know about her condition. Then came the reading of the will. Grandma Helen left everything to me, her house, her savings, all of it. Her lawyer explained that she had updated her will 6 months ago, after seeing how my life had transformed. She wanted to ensure you had a solid foundation to build your dreams upon, he said. The family exploded. Susan sent a barrage of texts, how dare you manipulate a sick old woman? That money should have been split equally. You're not the only grandchild. Mom and Dad tried a different approach. They showed up at Grandma's, now my house, acting concerned. Sweetie, you're dealing with a lot right now. Let us help you manage the inheritance. We have experience with these things. I closed the door in their faces. Then the rumors started. Family members I hadn't heard from in years began posting on social media, claiming I had taken advantage of Grandma Helen, that I had poisoned her mind against the family. Some even suggested I had deliberately kept her away from them during her illness. The reality? Grandma Helen made her own choices. She saw how my parents treated me, how they favored Susan, how they threw me out when I needed them most. She chose to support the grandchild who actually spent time with her, who shared her love of art and life, who visited her regularly even before all the success. Today, I received notice that Susan and my parents are consulting with lawyers about contesting the will. Let them try. Grandma Helen was meticulous. She had her lawyer document everything, including her clear mental state and the reasoning behind her decisions. I'm writing this from what used to be my small studio in her garage, now expanded into a full art workspace. Her house is filled with reminders of her, the coffee mug she always used still sitting by her favorite chair, her gardening hat hanging by the back door, the smell of her perfume lingering in her closet. The success continues to grow. Ethereal Beings just got nominated for several animation awards, and the theme park plans are moving forward. But tonight, sitting in this house that represents both my past and future, I just miss my grandmother. She taught me that success isn't just about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. As I continue to build this world of creatures and stories, I carry her wisdom with me. Every award, every achievement, every new creation is dedicated to her memory. I know there are more battles ahead. My family won't give up easily, especially now that there's inheritance involved. But I'm stronger now, more assured in who I am and what I'm capable of. Grandma Helen made sure of that. I'll update when there's news about the legal situation. For now, I'm focusing on honoring her memory through my work. The next season of Ethereal Beings will feature a new character inspired by her, a wise, gentle creature who helps others find their light in the darkness. She believed in me when no one else did. The least I can do is continue making her proud. Update 3, it's been 2 years since my first post, and I can finally say this story has reached its conclusion. And what an ending it is. My animation series Ethereal Beings has become a global phenomenon, with merchandise sales breaking records and theme park attractions under construction. My original artwork now sells for six-figure sums, and I've established myself as a respected name in both the animation and fine art worlds. Last month, I held my biggest gallery exhibition yet, a tribute to Grandma Helen, featuring new creatures inspired by her wisdom and love. The gallery was packed with collectors, critics, and fans. Everything was perfect until my parents and Susan showed up. I hadn't seen them since their failed attempt to contest Grandma's will. They lost that battle spectacularly. The judge not only upheld the will but also ordered them to pay all legal fees. But apparently, they weren't done trying to ruin my life. Just as I was discussing a major sale with an important collector, my mother's voice cut through the gallery. She stole our money. She manipulated her grandmother. Before security could react, she had uncapped a can of paint and flung it at my centerpiece painting. Thankfully, all my works were properly protected behind museum-grade glass, a precaution my gallery manager insisted on. The paint splattered harmlessly, but the damage to their reputation was done. Dozens of phones captured the entire incident, and it went viral within hours. I pressed charges immediately. My lawyer also filed for a restraining order and a separate lawsuit for defamation, citing years of harassment and the deliberate attempt to damage my career. The court proceedings were swift and decisive. The judge granted the restraining order, barring my parents and Susan from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or any venue where my work is being displayed. The defamation suit was settled out of court. They had to make a public retraction of all their claims and pay substantial damages. The financial impact hit them hard. My parents had to sell their house and move into a small apartment. Susan lost her social standing in the community. Turns out her influencer career was heavily dependent on presenting an image of family wealth. Meanwhile, my success has reached new heights. The Helen Thompson Foundation for Young Artists, which I established in my grandmother's memory, now provides scholarships and supplies to talented kids from low-income families. We've already helped dozens of young artists pursue their dreams. I married last spring, a wonderful artist I met through my foundation work. We bought a beautiful house with a massive studio space, and I'm expecting our first child. The nursery is decorated with gentle, protective creatures from my I Guardian series. Last week, I received the National Arts Achievement Award. As I stood at the podium accepting it, I could see my parents and Susan watching from outside the venue, respecting the restraining order distance. Their faces showed exactly what Grandma Helen once predicted, the bitter realization of what they had thrown away. But you know what? I felt nothing looking at them. No anger, no satisfaction, not even pity. They're just people from my past who taught me valuable lessons about self-worth and perseverance. My life is filled with love, creativity, and purpose now. The creatures that once existed only in my imagination bring joy to millions. My art hangs in galleries worldwide. The foundation helps other dreamers find their path. And most importantly, I'm building the kind of family I always wished I had, one based on love, support, and celebration of each person's unique gifts. Grandma Helen would be proud. Not just of my success, but of how I've used it to help others. Every morning, I visit her garden, now filled with sculptures of my creatures, and I can almost hear her say, "See? I told you your dreams were worth fighting for." This will be my final update. The story that began with rejection and pain has transformed into something beautiful, just like the creatures I create. Thank you all for being part of this journey. Remember, sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. And sometimes, being pushed away is actually the universe setting you up for something far better.